10 days ago, I began covering the beating of Christopher Quiles, an incarcerated individual at Mid-State Correctional Facility. His beating and torture occurred the day before Messiah Nantry, 22 years old, was murdered at the hands of the CERT team in front of the National Guard. In this video, both Christopher Quiles and his aunt, Ruby Rivera, speak to Sarah Wallace with NBC4 New York. I personally am very grateful that this is getting more mainstream media attention. Unfortunately, at the moment, no correction officers from the CERT team have been arrested and charged with the beating and torture of Christopher Quiles. In this video, Christopher and his aunt will be describing what he went through at the hands of the CERT team. Viewer discretion is advised. Christopher will be speaking about the torture that he underwent at Mid-State Correctional Facility. Some of you may be triggered by this video. Some of you may be suffering from PTSD. If that's the case, feel free to click away and watch something else.
One day before 22-year-old Messiah Nantry died at Mid-State Correctional Facility, another inmate says he was beaten by officers in the same unit. Chris Quiles is now telling his story. A warning, his description is graphic.
For those of you not familiar with Messiah Nantry, he was murdered the day after Christopher Quiles was beaten. Messiah Nantry was murdered by the CERT team, and currently his case is under investigation, and it has been moved to a special prosecutor, William Fitzpatrick, the Onondaga County District Attorney.
A state corrections spokesman says there is an ongoing investigation.
They just started beating me all the way to the van.
Chris Quiles is describing CERT, the emergency response team at Mid-State Correctional Facility. He says they targeted him in the mess hall on February 28th, one day before witnesses told us they saw CERT officers assault 22-year-old inmate Messiah Nantry, who died.
When I first got assaulted, I got hit with a baton. And when I hit the floor, I was attacked by half of the CERT team right then and there. I don't know how many, because every time I looked up, I was getting hit in the face. As I was getting told to put my hands behind my back, they were twisting my feet until it popped and twisting my fingers.
Pay attention to what Christopher Quiles is saying. They twisted his feet until it popped. Ultimately, he suffered broken ankles and they twisted his finger. What occurred had nothing to do with restraining an individual. It had to do with beating, torture, and sending a message.
They twisted my finger all the way until one snapped.
Chris' head is split open and he is still bleeding.
Quiles' aunt, Ruby Rivera, says she started getting these texts from relatives of inmates who were sending messages on their tablets. She sent emails to the superintendent, who responded there were absolutely no injuries.
He said,
I had to stop the video there. Ruby Rivera is going to be talking about her communication with the superintendent of Mid-State, and how the superintendent is saying there are no injuries. This is a blatant attempt to cover up the beating and torture of Christopher Quiles. But this is not uncommon. This is happening on a systematic basis throughout New York State Department of Corrections prisons. This is not a one-off situation.
that everything is fine, no one is hurt.
The 27-year-old, who is serving a 5-year sentence for drug possession, says he was put in a van and taken to another building.
I was kicked down, hit with a baton, and I was forced with his boot, and he was grinding my face all under the ground while they were beating me, twisting my fingers still.
He says he was moved to a room where inmates are frisked.
I had to stop it there because I just realized there is a similarity between Christopher Quiles and other individuals who have been beaten and murdered by the CERT team and correctional officers. That is this. We learned in the Robert Brooks murder, after the indictments of those correctional officers, that Robert Brooks suffered three beatings. On video, we saw the one that occurred in the infirmary, but there were two beatings prior to that. So it seems as though Christopher Quiles himself underwent a series of beatings.
The torture chamber, and they just kept beating me, kicking me in my genitals, pulling out my hair.
Quiles says he didn't get medical treatment for days.
I was medically treating myself. My head was split open at the time. I had to put state toothpaste, close it up myself. They were trying to hide the fact that they assaulted me and that they knew they did bad.
How do I
had to stop it there. Another distinction, another enormous slap in the face after he underwent that brutal beating is that there was a refusal of medical treatment. So what seems to be commonplace is that individuals get beaten, they get tortured, and they get refused medical treatment to cover up what these correctional officers are doing.
look at the CERT team that beat my nephew? I think they should share a cell next to him.
One thing I wanted to go back and I forgot to mention is that Ruby Rivera was learning about her nephew's beatings from family members of incarcerated individuals behind those walls. So it wasn't the correctional facility itself that notified Ruby Rivera of the beating and torture, as she mentioned. She tried to get information from the superintendent, and he blatantly lied about what occurred. She found out about this from family members who were communicating with other individuals in that facility. Let that sink in for a second.
Quiles says after he was beaten, he was warned.
They said, we'll be right back. We have to go take care of a few other things. We'll be right back.
The next day, news of Messiah Nantwi's death broke. More than a dozen state employees have been placed on administrative leave amid a criminal investigation. One witness told me what he saw.
I wanted to stop it there. Sarah Wallace mentioned 15 individuals have been suspended. One thing that's not said is whether it's a suspension without pay or with pay. Most likely, these individuals are still collecting a salary while this investigation is happening.
At the baton's out already. Guns blazing. And then they all file in the room, start beating on him, kicking him. And he's just saying, please stop. I didn't do anything, please stop.
The witness says state investigators talked to him later that day, that he told them everything.
One field member stepped on his ankles, and the other CERT team member, the second one, stepped with both feet on his ankles.
After the beating death of Robert Brooks in December, caught on body cam video officers did not know was recording, the commissioner ordered all guards to wear body cameras. But inmates tell us CERT officers were not wearing them during the incidents with Nantwi and Quiles. Still, Quiles says he can absolutely identify those he says assaulted him.
I can point out every single.
I just wanted to stop it there for a quick second. What we learned in the case of Messiah Nantwi is that there is body cam footage that was recovered from one of the correctional officers. Actually, to be honest with you, we don't know whether it's one or a couple, but individuals at Mid-State Correctional Facility who witnessed the beating death of Messiah Nantwi spoke to the New York Times. 8 out of 9 of them were willing to identify themselves and put their names on their statements. All of them said that the CERT team was not wearing body cams on them, but that there was a sergeant who was present who was wearing a body cam but had his body turned away so it wasn't capturing the beating itself. We will see if eventually if the body cam footage will be released to the general public. I'm sure a lot of journalists are putting in a FOIA request for that.
One of them by detail.
Quiles has been moved out of Mid-State. His earliest release date is June. He and his family say they still worry every day about his safety.
The Messiah didn't pass. They were coming to finish the job.
The job on you.
Yes.
He's supposed to come home, and is he? Is he walking out, or is he being carried out? That's the new fear for anyone who has a loved one in there. That's the new fear. Not that they have to be in prison, but will they make it out alive?
Quiles.
Ruby Rivera said, that's the new fear for anyone who has an incarcerated loved one. That's the new fear. And that's the fear of their loved one being beaten, being tortured by a correctional officer, by the CERT team. It's unfortunate that we live in this country where this is happening.
Says he has been interviewed by the State Office of Special Investigations and is fully cooperating. So far, no officers have been criminally charged.
No officers have been criminally charged in the beating and torture of Christopher Quiles. It seems as though the only time any action is taken is when somebody dies, is when someone dies. An individual has to die for any kind of justice to occur or for the perception of justice. And even that is not truly occurring. I'm going to be following what occurs in the case of Christopher Quiles, whether these officers will face charges, whether members of the CERT team will be held accountable for the beating and torture of Christopher Quiles. I will keep you informed. I will keep you updated. That's my promise to you. If you found value in this video, consider joining and becoming a member. Both membership levels are less than the price of a Starbucks cup of coffee. If not, no worries. What you can do is like the video, comment below. I read all of your comments for the most part. I try. I make my best attempt to comment on your comments. Share the video. And if you feel that I've earned it, please subscribe to the channel. My goal is to give you honest and direct feedback and go deeper than what the mainstream media is telling you. Take care, God bless, and see you next time.